Keith, you flagged this was the whole the revenue issue with the LCBO, and that we were talking about, will we find out what the real cost of the alcohol licensing was? But it seems though the revenues were down, and the government is blaming the strike in the summer.
Oh, yeah, those evil unions. Although the finance minister, he's very smooth, by the way, was very careful not to blame the union. We struck a deal. The costs are on everyone's side. But basically, the government's saying, yeah, that's cost at least $100 million in revenue. And then they point that in 27, 28, or 26, 27, that the LCBO's projected revenues are going to be actually $800 million higher than they were projected in the March budget, skipping over the fact that for the next 2 years, they're going to be about $500 million plus, $500 million plus below forecast because of the government's changes to the system. We also learned that, remember the government had said we knew they were paying $250 million to break the beer store contract a year early to put the beer and wine and mixed drinks in the corner stores. Well, we found out in the fall economic statement, there's another $179 million, almost $200 million going to refund LCBO fees to the brewers and other associations. Then we found that you add in these lost revenues. All of a sudden, with these lost, we are up to $1 billion to put booze into corner stores and in service stations. So that's a hell of a priority for a government to be laying out that kind of money for. But at least we're now getting what the actual costs are. The LCBO for the next 2 years, some serious losses, and they won't be attributed to the strike. They'll be attributed solely to the government's changes and modernization, if you will, of the liquor retailing plan in Ontario.
Well, John, the LCBO may get all that business back based on some of the noise you're hearing from retailers who are saying, listen, this is great, except, we didn't plan on the recycling, the right. Bottle return part of all of this. I remember when I was a kid, you used to bring your Coke bottles back, and they were equipped to do that. They are not now, and now they're responsible for it. If you sell the beer, you sell the wine, you got to take the bottles back. And there are some who are saying it's just not worth it for us. They're talking about giving that license back.
Yeah, and then with full disclosure, and it is in the public domain, I did all of the research for the Convenience Store Association of Canada on this issue in every province across the country. As I said, it's in the public domain. But I think what you've touched on here is something that's really, really important, and that is there's a poison pill in all of this. If the beer store has given up some market share because it's going to go to convenience stores, which even in my own neighborhood have invested a fair bit with an enclosed service in a packing area that's outside of the main core of the store. What you hear is of beer being just delivered and dropped when nobody is there. I mean, there's deliveries that are taking place when people are not around to actually take it into the store. It's being left on sidewalks. I mean, I could be taken to task for this, but that's what I hear from some of the convenience store owners. Secondly, the poison pill is, in fact, the requirements that will come where they've got to clean out all the bottles. They've got to stack it in a particular way. They have to make sure there's no cigarette butts or anything. It's, and what's being imposed on them, in fact, is the same standards that would have been at a big place like the beer store, where you take back and they take care of all of that stuff. So there's a hidden cost, a hidden tax in all of this to the convenience store owners. And you're right, there are a good number of them now who are saying, I'm not going to go down this path. It's just not worth it to me because of all of the cost and expense that's going to be put into it. So in a way, the government may end up having another issue on its plate that it could have anticipated, and that is that there are a whole bunch of convenience stores who are going to close up that area of their shop and say, no more, I'm going to give it back. And then you're back to where you were before.
But Tim, wasn't the simple answer to say, we're going to do all of this, and the function, among other things, of the beer store, not only to distribute some of it to various locations, is to take the empties back? And wouldn't that have been the simple solution?
Sorry, the LCBO take the empties back?
No, the beer store. They're already doing it. Why wouldn't we just let them keep on doing it?
Yeah, I'm shaking my head with this, and this strikes me as something that I don't think the minister or the premier were aware of when it comes to the rules are going to force onto some of these small mom and pop operators. I mean, look, I don't see it as much as I used to, but holy crow, the worst job you had after cleaning up after you had a house party was fishing the cigarettes out of half drunk beer bottles. It was gross. I can't imagine that they're going to have to do that for whatever comes in, from customers. I just, can I tell a quick story?
Yeah.
So, Andy Brandt, God rest his soul, just recently passed away, should be in the Political Hall of Fame. He had the most plum appointment as chair of the LCBO under conservative, liberal, and New Democrat governments. How he achieved that was incredible. And when he announced his retirement, Premier Harris was a guest speaker, congratulated Andy on all the increased sales. And then Harris paused in the line and said, "But you ran a goddamn liquor monopoly. Couldn't have been that hard." Right? And I just can't believe how often it seems to me the LCBO is screwing up. This policy does not seem well thought through. They had the whole bags debacle. They're going to put money into vestibules that we had all stand in before we go into the store. It was usually seen as pretty, not an easy run, but money would just come in the door, and it just seems like they've had screw up after screw up. Maybe it's ministerial. I just think they've got a confidence problem.
Yeah, well, and I think it's one of those things, Kathleen, when you start to talk about the LCBO, no matter what some of these snags are administratively, or how we're executing certain ideas or policies, I think the experience in the store, most people look at it and say, I'm good with it, and they're okay with the fact that the money that's going to the LCBO is supporting government services.
For sure. And I mean, people like the LCBO. I think, to Tim's point about screw up after screw up, this is all happening months earlier than it was supposed to, right? There was a plan to move this, as I understand it, the government was going to do this when the agreement with the beer store was expired and so on, and they rushed it again because it's a pre-election move. This stuff is complicated. It was our government that put wine and beer into grocery stores around the province. That was a hard negotiated, it was a difficult agreement to negotiate. We worked on getting the licenses in particular grocery stores. And I mean, there was a whole raft of things that we had to deal with. And again, with, working with the beer store and as the recycler. I think what's happened here is the time was not taken. As Tim said, this seems like it's not well thought through. I think that's exactly right. I think it's exactly the case that the government rushed on this. The premier, there may be things the premier wasn't aware of that he should have been aware of, and he would have been aware of if they had gone through due process and had thought it through. And I don't understand at all why the beer store can't just continue to be the recycler. They've got the expertise. It makes sense. And I just think this is, if there isn't a reversal on this, then the implementation of the policy of putting beer and wine in these outlets it's not going to happen in the way the government thinks it was going to.